Hello, welcome to this next Blender tutorial, Blender stroke substance tutorial. So we're going to use Blender to create a low poly-ish asset, and then we're going to make variants from it. So the first thing we need to do is make the asset, of course, and I've decided on like a tin can. So I was thinking about, you know, litter, rubbish, that sort of thing. So let's go into Blender and get the general scene up. I'll delete this cube, and then we'll add in a cylinder. There we go. So I've gone and had a look at a reference image to get the measurements for this cylinder, or what it should be, and let's key those in. So my radius wants to be, say, 1.5 inches, and then my height needs to be 4.875 inches. There we go. Now we've got a nicely proportioned drinks can. One thing here is that, you know, I want a relatively low poly asset, so I don't really want all of these edges here. So let's change that from 32 down to, say, 24, just to reduce our poly count a little bit. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of shaping now. So first of all, well, let's get rid of purif. Let's just click that. There we go. We'll go to edit mode. So tap on edit, and now I want to add a little bit of shaping at the top and at the bottom. So we'll use this loop cut, and then point at an edge, and then left click and drag down, and then we'll click and drag up again, just to get the top in. Okay, so let's switch to poly mode and go back to a select box. Just select the bottom and press the S key, S to scale, and then just scale that in ever so slightly, and then the top will scale in a tiny bit more. So S to scale, and then just move that in. There we go. So we're going to, you know, add some curvature to this, but not too much, because we can bake in some from a higher poly mesh. And we go to our edge select here, and I'll select the loop of edges around the top. So I'll press Alt and click, and now we can bevel it. So Control B is bevel, and then I'll click in and use my width modifier here to type something in. So let's say 0.5 inches. That's too much. 0.25 inches. There we go. Somewhat along those lines. And then we'll increase the amount of segments to 2. We'll do the same on the bottom. So Alt click to select the loop of edges there, and Control B to set the bevel off. Whoops. And then type in 0.125 inches down the bottom. There we go. So it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to look exactly, you know, the same as a you know, a drinks can, but it's going to be close, and that's what we want. We want it to be pretty close. And then we're going to further refine the shape. Sorry, I've just punched my mic there. When we get to a higher poly version. So what else do I want to do? I just want to put a lip on the top. So I'm going to select the top polygon and just use the extrude region and grab that and just move that upwards a little bit. And again, we will be able to smooth that and shape it somewhat with a high poly mesh. So let's alt click around that top to get the edges. This time we're going to bevel it just a teeny tiny bit. So let's say 1 millimeter. and then click into segments, and for segments I only want one here, so just to get a little smooth edge. And I'll do the same on the bottom, so Control B, click in 1mm, just to add in a little bit of smoothing in there. Okay, so that's more or less our kind of prototype for a can, and it's going to form our low poly, but I'm going to want to deform it, and that means that I'm going to need some vertical geometry down the can here. So let's click the loop slice and then select in, click in to put the loop down, and now I can type in a value for the number of loops I want. So I'm going to go perhaps 6. Yeah, don't want too many, but I want enough to allow me to, you know, put some dents in to crush the can and do things like that. Okay, so last thing on the modelling then, I'm just going to cap the ends because I like to cap things. So I'm going to select the top polygon, press I to insert, and then bring that in, and then we'll change our selection mode to vertex, which will select all those vertices, and then we'll press the M key for merge, and then click at center, and then we'll repeat on the bottom. So click I to insert, move in, click to drop it, change to vertices. Oops, I managed to mess that up. There we go. Change the vertice mode, press M to merge, and then at center. There we go. So that's the basis of our can. What we'll do next is we're going to UV map it, because we're going to need a UV map for our low poly, and then we'll create a higher poly version with a bit more, you know, shape and a little bit of definition in it. So I will talk to you in the next section. So let's do a quite quick UV job on this. So we go to our UV room, there we go, UV editing. Let's zoom in with the full stop on the numpad, and then in edge mode I'm going to put an edge around the top, and then shift alt, and I'll put an edge around the bottom, and then right click, and we'll mark those as seams. There we go. And if I get to the front view, I want to split it. So let's go from top then to bottom. Sorry, my brain is not functioning very well. I was just sort of marking my start and end points. So I'm just shift clicking on each edge until I get to the top. Right, so once you've got that, mark that as a seam, then press A to select everything in the 3D view, and then A to select everything in the UV view here, and we can go to UV and unwrap, or you could press U and unwrap, and that's what we get, and that's not too bad. Let's see what changing the angle based to conformal looks like. So click on the UV unwrap properties down here, change that to conformal, and that will get you that. Now it would be really nice if that was straight, but I want to limit the amount of seams that I'm using, so I'm going to leave that as it is. Okay, so now I want to rotate this around and pack it. So this is the top, this is the bottom, so I want to rotate it around. So R to rotate, and then just rotate until the bottom is where you want it to be, and there we go. And now I'm just going to confirm that I know that that's the top by selecting a polygon here, and that reveals that this polygon is on that island. So it is at the top. And that just means that when you use the UV, I know which is the top, which is the bottom, and I know which is where to put my lettering, and I don't have to reverse my lettering. It's all good. Okay, so just press A again and press A again, and now I want to pack it. So it's UV and pack islands. Just untick rotate down here, and then I want to put a little bit of extra margin on it, and that's the distance between the islands. So if I put 0.01 on there instead of 0.001, we should get a little extra distance. In fact, for this one it's not really much point doing that when I can simply select an island and move it. So to select a whole island, if I go into poly mode, I select one of these polygons and then press Ctrl L, which stands for linked, and it will select the whole island for me. Then I can use G and move that out of the way. And similarly I'll do the same for here, so select a polygon, Ctrl L, G, and move that there. There we go. Now everything's got a lot of distance between it, and that's useful because when you're texturing your asset, from the texturing process you'll get a bleed around the edge of your UV islands, and if your islands are too close together you might get that bleed overlapping another UV island, which you don't want because it will just show up as an artifact. It will just show up and look weird, basically. Okay, so that's our low poly can, all UV'd up. In the next bit what we'll do is start to or make a copy of this and then subdivide it to make it high poly, and then we'll do a bit of shaping and add a little extra detail to transfer between the meshes. Okay, so I will talk to you. Okay, so I've gone back into the modelling room and I've pressed tab to come out of edit mode into object mode, because now I can duplicate this. Just before I do that, I'm going to right click and shade smooth so that we have a smooth shaded mesh, and we're going to need that at some point in time. Okay, so let's right click, not right click, let's select our cylinder and then press Shift D, and then as you move around you'll see you're creating a new copy here. Now I want it to overlap perfectly with this, so if I right click it will drop that on our original positioning. Okay, so let's rename these now. So select an object, and then on this little orange square we have the properties. So let's change the name to can low for that one, and whoops, is that a low or a P? It's a P. There we go. I think I've done it again, never mind. And then can high for the other one. Okay, so let's hide that one, hide the low poly, and then for the high poly one we're going to add a modifier. So on the little spanner or wrench tab there, add a modifier, subdivision surface. Now I can increase my subdivisions here to get it even smoother, and that's good, and then we'll apply that. So now when I go into edit mode, you see we have a much higher polygon count on our can, and we can use that to smooth out our low poly and to add in some detail. So one of the details I'd want to add is a little indent in the top here. So if I select these middle polygons using my left mouse button to drag a box over that center vertex, I can then press Control and numpad plus until I get up to the edge, and then I want to insert this, so extrude it rather, so press the extrude button and then just drag that down, not too far, just a little distance. Okay, so I'm also going to want to add a bevel to these edges, because I don't want it to be really sharp, I want it to be a little bit smoothed. So I've Alt clicked on the top one, and then Shift Alt click on the bottom, and then Control B to bevel, and then click into the viewport, and on the bevel I'm going to probably want a fraction of a millimeter. So let's go 0.5 millimeters. See, even that's too much. 0.25 millimeters. That's a little bit better. Let's add a smoothing segment in there. There we go. So that smooths that out. Let's have a look at the bottom. I think that's kind of okay. Should be good. Okay, so now the purpose of this is to make our low poly model look as smooth as this. So the low poly model, you know, is only going to be seen at a distance, so it doesn't need to be high poly. You know, we could use this, but as soon as I get, you know, a number of these into a scene, that scene's memory overhead is going to become quite high. So we want to reduce that by using a lower poly model, but maintaining some of the detail. And we do that by baking the normals between one and the other, so that the smooth one will take on the shape of the high one without all of that geometry. So we'll do that in the next video. Yes, of course. Yes, I'll talk to you then. Okay, so we're ready to bake now. So what we can do is just unhide our low model, and we can see that they're overlapping very well, but the low poly model, or the high poly model rather, intersects with it a little bit oddly. And we've got this little kind of don't know what you call it. The mesh of one is poking outside of the mesh of the other, so there's a little bit of poke through. So we need to accommodate for that, but I'm going to bake it from default, and then I'm going to show you how to deal with that. Okay, so first of all, I need a material on our low poly, and I think I've probably set one up, so I will delete it and then create a new one, and we'll call it tin can. There we go. Oh, it's come up tin can 1. Let's make it a bit more unique then, so tin_can. There we go. It's just because I've been doing things between scenes. And then I'll select my low poly mesh, and then with Shift L down I'll select my high and go to the shading room, and here we have our tin can. If you don't have the tin can selected there, you can use this drop down and pick it. There we go. And now I need a new image to bake our normal to. So over in this little image viewer here, we can add a new one. So where is it? New image. I'll call it tin can normal. Set the width to whatever you want. I'm going for 2048 by 2048, but you could do smaller if you wished. I'm just going to turn the alpha off, and I think I do want a 32-bit float, so let's click OK. So that's created me a blank image to work with, but I need it to be in the material. So for that I'll go Shift A, go to texture, select image texture, and then from this little image drop down I'll select my tin can normal, and that will let me give me something to bake to. Okay, so that's our setup. Now to bake it I need to be on our render properties here. I need to switch from Eevee, which is kind of my default, to cycle, and then down the bottom here we have some options. So it will probably come in for you as combined. If you change it from combined to normal, it will just bake our normal map for us, and that should be 0 because it's the default. So I want to bake selected to active, and I want the output to be image textures, and for that I need this to be selected, so it's got to have this white border around it so that it knows which image I want to bake to. And then at the top of the menu there, I'm just going to slide up a bit and just make sure my GPU is going to do the work for me. If yours says CPU, you might want to switch that to GPU because it will be quicker. And then we press the bake button. Now down here you should see then it's starting to bake the texture, and it takes a few moments, not so bad on the GPU. The CPU takes a while, but it will chug through while it's doing its calculation. And it's basically projecting rays between the two models to check the distances and then to calculate, you know, how different the normal map should be on the low poly one. So I will just press pause here for a moment and I'll be back in a second. If I can find the pause button. If I can find my mouse. Oh, it's down there. My mouse is locked up. Have I locked up? No, not completely. It's just my mouse. Okay, so no need to no need for pausing there. Oh, my mouse is completely locked up. What's going on? Sure it's this one. Oops. Ah, there we go. Right, so my mouse locked up there. Sorry, I had to unplug it and plug it back in again. That doesn't happen very often. Okay, so as we can see, it's baked our map now. Our image contains a normal map. But as you can see, it's got these little green, orangey, sort of yellowy green marks on there. And that's where the meshes are intersecting and poking too far away from each other. So for that, because that will show up on our normal map if I connect it to the mesh, we want to just do a quick adjustment, and that's under this selected to active. So I want to extend the rays. I want to make them go a bit further away from the mesh, you know, to find the other mesh. So I'm just going to put 1 millimeter in here, and you know, it's very fine. It's very sort of distance sensitive. If you have a very big mesh and there's lots of big differences, you might want to project further. But the danger you get into there is that you intersect other bits of the model, and then you get a whole nother set of problems. So be careful on that. So I'm setting my max ray distance, and then we'll rebake. So I've got my texture selected, and I'll bake that. And I'll just pause here, and then we'll be back. Okay, so that's rebaked now, and as you can see, it's lost those horrible little greeny yellow triangles in there. So now what should we do? Well, we need to hook it up. Now I can't just plug this in to that normal, it needs a little bit of conversion. So first of all, I want to change the color space, so I need to save this somewhere. So in the image editor, on this little 3-line icon here, click that and then go to save, and then find a directory and save the image. And now I can change this color space to non-color. There we go. Now press Shift A, and under vector we want normal map, and this will take this color information and process it and output it to our normal. There we go. Okay, so we've plugged that in now, so let's go and have a look. Let's look back in the modelling room. It's going to be a little easier to see in here. Oh, I'm in edit mode. Let's come out of that, and I'm going to hide the high poly mode, the high poly mesh rather. So that's what it's looking like now. If I go into the shaded view or the rendered view, that's what we're getting, which is not too bad at all. I can just see the little rim that's been baked there. Now you'll notice that when you see it in profile, it's still faceted, and it will be, because the normal map doesn't actually change the geometry. All it's doing is faking it across each polygon. So the render engine picks it up and thinks, oh, that's a smooth piece, but at the edges it is going to be a bit faceted. On the other hand, you know, for this low poly tin can model, it's going to be used to scatter across, you know, a large area. I'm never going to see it from close up, so I think that's perfectly alright. Okay, let's just nip back to the shading room and change my material, because that's the wrong one. There we go. Now if I go to fully rendered mode, there we go. If I now disconnect this by just dragging it and pulling it away, you'll see the difference. You'll see that it actually, you know, almost physically changed, but it's only changing really on the surface, not on the sides, as I said. And if I plug this back in, there we get it, a nice smoothed out tin can image. Okay, so that's that. In the next little section, which I'll probably do in a separate video, what I'm going to do is going to take this out to Substance, and I'm going to add some more normal detail to it and add a texture, and then we'll bring that in and create some variants. So I will talk to you in that set.